Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the opening session of the inaugural Civic University Network Conference, the Civic Movement Universities Working in Partnership. My name is Richard Brabner, Director of the UPP Foundation, and I'm delighted to be your host for the session. Now, before we get started, I just want to say a few words about the Civic University Network. As you may recall, one of the key recommendations from our original Civic University Commission was to create a sector-led membership body to support civic engagement. As a result, last year, the UPP Foundation led a coalition of funders, including the DFE, Carnegie UK Trust, and Arts Council England, in creating a competitive process for an organisation to establish and host the Civic University Network. And of course, this was awarded to Sheffield Hallam University, and the network was launched just over a year ago. Well, when we came up with the idea of the network, not in our wildest dreams did we think that it would have operated entirely virtually in its first 12 months. But it's a great testament to the team at Hallam that the first year has been such a huge success, with 114 members and counting, representing 70% of universities in the UK, and a huge amount of activity which you'll all be aware of. And it has never been more important, the civic role. You know, the role universities play in helping our local communities recover is going to be so important. So on that note, I just want to say huge congratulations to Richard, Greg, Debbie, and the wider team for the great work that they've done this year. And I'm really pleased that the UPP Foundation has today announced additional £50,000 funding to support the second year of the network and help universities to lead a green recovery locally. And I'll be talking about this a little bit more at the end of the session. So on to the first session today, the Civic Movement Universities Working in Partnership. This morning, we are setting the scene for the conference. It isn't a panel, but a series of contributions about the civic movement from a group of distinguished guests, Lord Kerslake, Michelle Donnellan, Lord Billamoria, and Professor Andy Westwood. But before I hand over to our first speaker, I have a few housekeeping messages. The webinar is going to be recorded and made available after the conference via the network members area. You can use the chat function throughout the session for general commentary and discussion. Make sure you send to all panelists and attendees. For optimal viewing experience, please select to hide non-video participants. The instructions to do this will be provided in the chat function. Anyway, so without further ado, on to our first speaker for his reflections. And of course, it really couldn't be anyone else. The chair of the Civic University Commission and chair of the Networks Advisory Board, Lord Kerslake. Over to you, Bob.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Richard. Can I say how delighted I am to be speaking at the first Civic Movement Conference today? It is now, as just been said, over 2 years the UPP Foundation University Commission report was published. Entitled Truly Civic, Strengthening the Connect between Universities, it reaffirmed the importance of the civic role to both places and universities and set out recommendations for how that role could be enhanced. 2 of its key recommendations were the development of civic university agreements and the creation of the Civic University Network. There was all-party support for the report and an enthusiastic response from the sector, with over 1/3 of universities committing there and then to produce civic university agreements. As you've just heard from Richard, the Civic University Network came into being a year later. Hosted by the university whose board I chair, Sheffield Hallam University, it now has 115 universities as members, or over 70% of the sector. To date, it's organised 12 regional roundtables and 25 network events, and engaged a wide range of universities in producing a civic index. That's an extraordinary achievement in just a year. I'm personally absolutely delighted at the progress made. The movement genuinely goes from strength to strength. And this is down to the enthusiasm of universities for the agenda, but also for the terrific work of the team, and my congratulations to them too, and indeed the support of the UPP Foundation and others. So well done to all of those who've been involved. Now, universities, of course, were carrying out their civic role well before we did our report. Indeed, the Commission found many excellent examples of universities engaged in civic activities. So what were we saying that was different? Well, at its heart, the civic agenda is about being strategic, thinking holistically and inclusively about place, engaging with local communities rather than doing to them, developing priorities collaboratively from the outside in, not the inside out, and recognizing the vital anchor role that universities play, particularly in places with major economic and social challenges. How has COVID changed the civic role? Well, I think it has made it more challenging and more urgent. COVID has been a disruptor, a destroyer, and an accelerator in some instances, but it has definitely not been a leveler. The most deprived communities and places have been hardest hit, both in terms of their health and their economy. As evidenced by the work of the UK 2070 Commission, which I chair, the UK was already one of the most spatially unbalanced countries in the developed world. COVID has widened that inequality. And to have any chance of genuinely levelling up, the government will need a large-scale, comprehensive, long-term plan. So far, what we've seen is some useful initiatives, but nothing on the scale that is likely to change the dial. It has to be said also that universities have had operational and financial challenges of their own as a consequence of COVID, reducing their bandwidth to undertake their civic role. The pandemic, though, has brought universities closer to their local partners in health and local government than I think has ever been experienced in the past. And this is a positive that can be built on. Economic recovery and indeed levelling up will be driven by the 63 largest towns and cities. Universities are at the heart of these places, and they can make a real difference to the levelling up agenda. Now, the policy environment for universities undoubtedly has been pretty hostile at the recent times. Contested new legislation on freedom of speech, concerns about university links to China, challenges to the value of some courses, and the possibility of a headline fee cut. This reinforces for me the importance of the civic agenda, strengthening the base of local support for what universities are doing and can do is absolutely vital. So here are my 6 thoughts about how universities can advance their civic role in the time of COVID. Firstly, look at how the closer collaboration during lockdown can be maintained and strengthened. If they've not done so already, and I hope there aren't many on this call who are in this position, commit to developing a civic university agreement. Thirdly, as part of this agreement, consult with staff, students, and communities about what they see are the priorities for the civic role coming out of COVID. Fourthly, join with LEPs, mayors, and local authorities to help produce economic recovery plans. We'll hear a bit more about that from Lord Ballamoria in a moment. Crucial to these plans is a robust and honest analysis of where COVID has left their city or town. Fifthly, take the lead in creating new collaborative partnerships with further education and others to ensure that access and participation at all ages moves forwards and not backwards. Sixthly and finally, review what assets their university can bring to the long-term economic recovery and to the advanced economy in their places. Now, the beauty of all the above is they don't need us to wait for government. We can take the action, we can do this now, we can be part of a genuinely powerful civic movement. A terrific conference in store, and I look forward to hearing from all of you about the outcomes of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob, and a great start to the conference. Before you hand over to the Minister, I just wanted to ask a quick question about reflections from your comments around how this has disrupted and changed the civic role. It'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on whether you think the pandemic has changed the priorities of institutions in developing their civic university agreements, or whether it's just accelerated the need to be more civic.
I certainly think it's accelerated the need to be more civic because it's become very, very clear just how important the university role is in places. But what I think it probably has changed is the urgency of tackling the economic impact. And of course, it's uneven. We will hope for a sharp recovery as we come out of COVID, but there's no doubting the damage that has been done to some, and particularly those who are already on low-income jobs. So reskilling is crucially important. I also think a priority that will come through is how collaboration can work to improve health. And as I said in my few words to start this conference, to try and avoid any sense in which we move backwards on access and participation, which is a real risk. So I think it will definitely accelerate the importance of the civic role. And I think it will put much greater emphasis on the things I've just spoken about.
No, I agree completely with all of that. Now, before you hand over to the Minister, you made a really important point around not leaving it to government. And I think that that's a message that we should all take home. But we are obviously really pleased that we've got the Minister who sent us a video. And I think, Bob, you're going to be handing over to her.
Yes, I am. And of course, we need and welcome government endorsements for this agenda. So I'd now like to introduce Michelle Donovan MP, Minister of State for Universities.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me here today for the Civic University Network inaugural conference. And thank you, Bob, for your warm introduction and for all that you've done in contribution to public service. Now, before I move on to tackle today's discussion, I would like to pay tribute to the work that our universities have done across the country during this pandemic. You have helped keep students learning on track and embraced online teaching. You have supported their mental health and well-being, and you have contributed in no modest fashion to the development of vaccines to overcome this virus. So thank you. And in particular, I thank you for enhancing and prioritising your mental health and well-being support services for students. Because in these difficult times, protecting students and staff mental health and well-being remains vital. And I absolutely recognise the importance of access to mental health and well-being support, and early on. It is with great pride that I am able to join this exciting event today with such a diverse range of topics. And in particular, I aim to shed a light on what more universities can and can continue to do within communities to have a positive influence. Already, we are welcoming huge progress in getting the Civic network up and running during the pandemic, with over 100 universities actively involved. To me, this conference is particularly exciting and comes in such an important time because civic society is about problem solving after all. It is about active membership in associations that bring benefit to members and the wider public. And I can think of no place in our country where this is more natural than our universities. But I stand here today with a simple argument to make. There is more that we can do, as I'm sure you will agree. And as our country comes out of a pandemic that has taken a terrible toll, I want universities to take a leading role in fostering civic action in our country, whilst at the same time becoming engines of regional growth and levelling up across our country. Our university's history is a history of their communities. Their identity is intertwined with the regions in which they were born and embedded. And I'm confident that nobody here today will disagree that universities as anchor institutions are an important component in levelling up, and that civic agreements will be a central component in doing so. An anchor institution has a large presence in a place, but are also tied to their places by their shared missions and their local relationships. And it is these characteristics that lead us to the conclusion that universities can provide the fuel we need to spur our economic growth as we rebound from COVID-19. One of the most important things that universities can do in their local area is to work with schools. In fact, I believe universities can have such an impact here, helping to raise attainment by working with schools, whether that be by sponsoring schools, by supporting a robust curriculum, or running summer camps. Universities have the potential to make a tremendous difference in opening up opportunities. So I want your access budgets not to be spent on marketing, but on raising standards, providing the role models, the information, encouraging aspiration, and highlighting the high quality opportunities available. This government supports real social mobility, not by just admitting disadvantaged students with good grades, but focusing even more on helping them to achieve and complete courses and going the extra mile to raise standards and aspirations in schools. So I urge all universities that are not already doing so to come together around a shared vision to transform places, because by doing this, you will become well placed to support local people, local economies, and your local communities. In other words, you are in a prime position to help us to level up our country. Of course, there is a role for government to play in all of this, and the UK government is providing an additional £220 million of funding through the UK Community Renewal Fund to help local areas prepare for the launch of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund in 2022. This fund aims to support people and communities most in need across the UK to pilot programmes and new approaches that will invest in skills, community and place and local business and supporting people into employment. The fund ties in closely to the work of the network. So I encourage universities to work with local authorities as they bid for investment where possible. It is my firmly held view, and I am sure you share it too, that universities can act as bastions of civic society, bringing benefits for the whole country, but also their local communities. And the Civic University Network and the Civic University Commission, before it took a leading role in how we can take a proactive approach to civic activity, The network's strategic vision, alongside its tools and materials, are helping members create civic university agreements, which in turn benefit society. And I want to see more and more of these. The government provided funding to get the network started, but we could not have seen such success already without you, our universities, being eager to take up this challenge. And I'm delighted that 14 agreements have already been formalised and another 34 are in development. These agreements have taken a great deal of painstaking work by so many of you, but already the Civic University agreements that have been forged as a result are nothing short of fantastic, and there are 3 distinctive areas that I believe warrant further attention and that I will touch upon today. These 3 areas have become increasingly important as we recover from the pandemic. Firstly, employment, education and skills. As we embark on a new future after this pandemic, the role of universities will be absolutely central to delivering the key skills and the recovery initiatives that we have. Take the Universities of Nottingham Civic Agreement, signed last year, which among many things committed to realigning business support programmes and developing new initiatives with partners to support COVID-19 local economy recovery and renewal. This will encompass the delivery of current business and innovation support programmes for local SMEs, reducing the graduate talent drain from the local area, ensuring the area is more successful in securing enterprise, innovation and skills funding, and engaging in the government's levelling up and innovation-led growth agendas. Secondly, health collaboration. In Lincoln, universities have pledged to support the City of Lincoln Council in enhancing the city through a Civic University agreement. This includes boosting the health of local people. Lincoln Medical School is set up to directly respond to the needs of the county and welcomed its first 80 students in September 2019. The school will be delivering first-class medical training to around 400 students, and a planning application has been submitted for a new dedicated teaching facility on campus. All of this is set up to respond to the healthcare challenges that Lincolnshire faces with its rural geography and ageing population. And lastly, a high street presence. An area I know many in this country are worried about is our high streets up and down the country, which have come under pressure during the last year. Many of you may recall that in late 2020, it was announced that Debenhams, the 242-year-old department store chain, would be leaving the high street for good, with the closure of all of its stores, placing thousands of jobs at risk. In Gloucestershire, not too far from where I live and represent, the university has been working hard to transform the iconic former Debenhams building into a new university campus and support regeneration in the city. The idea is that through this regeneration, there will be an increase in footfall for the benefit of other city centre organisations, including retailers, and also encourage the public into the new building for dual-use services. This engaged, outward-looking approach cuts to the very heart of what civic engagement is, to build relationships with local partners to promote the well-being of local communities. They are tailored to their locality and are evidence-based and measure their impact, so I look forward to seeing the results. Another aspect that will benefit from engagement with the civic agenda is lifelong learning. Many of you will be well acquainted with our lifelong loan entitlement as part of the Lifetime Skills Guarantee. This provides every student a flexible lifelong loan entitlement to the equivalent of 4 years of post-18 education, available for both modules and full years of study, whether in their local college or at a university. Now, this will have a truly transformative impact on post-18 study, delivering greater parity between further education and higher education. It will also give people the opportunity to train, to retrain, and to upskill throughout their lives to respond to the changing skill needs and employment patterns. Under the flexible skills system, people can build up learning over time and have a real choice in how and when they study to acquire new life-changing skills. It will make it easier for young people to take a one-year course and then head straight into the labour market, knowing that they can top it up later if they wish, and for older people to study locally, to top up their skills and to retrain. The rollout of higher technical qualifications is also a crucial part of the lifelong loan entitlement and our broader skills agenda. As you will know all too well, at the moment, sometimes employers are struggling, especially in certain areas, to find skilled recruits, and some students don't always know which courses will lead them on to the best jobs. And that is why we've introduced a national approvals process to show where higher technical courses offer the skills that employers need. It is vital that we have prestigious, high-quality options at all levels of study so that students can make informed choices. So how can universities help? Well, I want you to engage with your students so we can get this right and meet local needs and demands. I want you to engage with businesses in your area because we need to be giving students the skills that employers of the future need. LLE will enable universities to be responsive to people taking opportunities to train, retrain and upskill throughout their lives and working with local employers to help graduates into work. One of the key changes that will be brought in 2025 will be support for more modular study, and I want to work with universities to put them in place. Why? Because it is hard, if not impossible, to take 3 years out of full-time employment when you have a mortgage, children or caring responsibilities. And that's why we must embrace flexibility and facilitate the growth of modular provision with a loan system to accommodate it. This will revolutionise our education offering. I entered politics to create opportunities, and this flagship policy will do just that, enabling those who had never dreamt that higher education was for them the opportunity to study at university, or those who had longed to do a higher technical qualification to seek their dream job but felt it was all too late. I also think, though, that by embracing this and expanding those who can join your universities, we will be bolstering civic networks and benefiting society as a whole. By working closely with local educational partners, with businesses and with communities, and expanding your cohort of students, we will be able to bring a proactive approach to civic society that we need more than ever. We will consult on this matter and bring forward legislation this Parliament. But make no mistake, by pushing this agenda forward, our universities will be better equipped to help us to rebound from the pandemic and deal with the longer term challenges, from demographic change to becoming a green energy leader. These are long-term challenges, but I know there is also work that can be done right here, right now. With the UK labour market, like other major economies hit by COVID-19, one of the first issues we must grapple with together is making sure that those students who graduate this year are supported in transition. In government, we recently announced our Graduate Employment and Skills Guide, helping those at the start of their career journey. At each step, the guide signposts to a range of opportunities to help build employability skills and gain work experience or enter the labour market. There is also information on further study and where students and graduates can access support and advice. I know many higher education providers have already developed new and innovative ways to support students and graduates who are looking to continue their studies or to prepare for employment. And I also know all universities want their graduates to do well, and the vast majority of you are offering everything from careers hubs to CV writing services, all to help students take those next steps. But I have asked universities to bolster their work in this area, and in return I've seen some fantastic examples of support already. Take Manchester Metropolitan University, for example, who are running an employer design programme to teach graduates local skills, whereas the University of Winchester is offering lifetime careers advice through a graduate careers pack. And the University of Portsmouth is checking in on all final year students for one-to-one support through their bespoke phone campaign. At the same time as our economy does start to recover, we want to see local businesses growing and investing in local talent. Many regions across the UK are running challenges for graduates in their areas, helping them to find jobs locally, but I want universities to go even further and work with businesses to help identify these opportunities. My department is working with Universities UK, the Association of Graduate Careers Advisory Services, the Institute of Student Employers, the Office for Students and the sector to understand what more we can do to support graduates who are looking to enter the labour market or continue their studies at this challenging time. Already we have put in place extensive support through the furlough scheme, which has been extended to September, the Job Support Scheme grant, loans and tax cuts, have protected thousands of businesses and millions of people, including graduates. It forms part of our package to help people who are at this very start of their career journey. As part of the government's skills recovery package plan for jobs, we are investing an additional $32 million in the National Careers Service up to March 2022. The investment will support delivery of individual careers advisors for over 500,000 people whose jobs and learning have been affected by the pandemic. I know that it is going to take this country, along with the entire world, a long time to recover from the scars of this pandemic. The sad reality of the times we are living in mean that some of these communities, and the most vulnerable within them, have come under increasing pressure. Across the length and breadth of the country, many people will be worried about the future, about job prospects, and how the economy can work for them. But we will recover, and with your help, your continued commitment to your students, but also to your communities. I believe we will not just get there faster, but we will leave a legacy that says we will not leave anyone behind. That is our task, our challenge, and our opportunity. So I look forward to working with you.
And that was fascinating to hear the government's priorities linked with the civic agenda, and that video alongside all the sessions will be available after the conference. Now, our third speaker needs little introduction. Lord Billamoria is president of the CBI with a very distinguished career in business. He is, of course, Chancellor of the University of Birmingham, one of the partner universities on the Civic University Network, and has been a powerful advocate for the global and international role of universities for many, many years. So, Karen, over to you.
Richard, thank you very much, and thank you also to my friend and colleague and fellow crossbench peer, Bob Kerslake. Lord Kerslake, thank you for your introduction, for all you're doing for all of us, and good to hear from the Minister just now, talking about so many important things, including the importance of regional growth and lifelong learning. The higher education sector, I think, needs to be commended in its response to COVID-19. It's dealt with a hugely challenging environment, adapted at speed, providing remote learning, making campuses COVID secure. I've seen this firsthand as Chancellor of the University of Birmingham, where we've led the way in implementing testing around the country through our professors in our medical school, but also within our university itself in terms of actually implementing regular testing available to all our staff and students to make our campuses COVID secure. And it's been difficult delivering these teaching outcomes in this environment. The CBI, of which I'm proud to be president, we've been pressing the government to bring business and education into the decision-making progress to ensure communications are clear and timely. And we keep asking with this throughout this pandemic, any decisions that are made should be evidence-based. And I will say right up front, I was totally against universities not being allowed to open up after the Easter holidays. Schools have been open since the 8th of March, having implemented testing, regular testing. It's worked, infections have not spread, and universities have been deprived. Our students have been deprived until yesterday to start at university. That was wrong, it was illogical. There was no evidence for this about students moving around the country. It's only first-year students on the whole that have accommodation at university. Second, third onwards have their own accommodation, rented accommodation. There's nothing the government or universities can do to stop them from returning to their homes, which they did. So they've been deprived, and I think it's wrong in their final terms of their year, and in many cases, final terms of their degree, to have been deprived. This bad for the students, bad for the universities, bad for the economy, and bad for the country. And I really do believe going ahead, we've got to be evidence-based in this. And I will also say right up front, although I'm sure the minister was well-meaning in everything that she said, I do not think our universities, including our civic universities, get the attention and importance that they deserve in this country. They're often taken for granted. And I think we need universities to be given far more importance. They're a jewel in the crown of our country. And I think they're not given enough importance and by government. And I think many people take universities for granted. At the CBI, we are launching our vision for 2030, the next decade, called Seize the Moment, where we feel this is the time in a time of crisis to look long term, to look ahead for the opportunities and challenges for our country. We focused on decarbonization, innovation, trade, the regions, including economic clusters, which I'll talk about, inclusion, including diversity and skills, and health, life sciences, and the role of business in this. And the role of universities in seizing the moment is going to be absolutely crucial, because universities are the beating heart of regional economies, anchoring investment, spurring local growth, and business investment, talent pipelines, incubation to startup firms and smaller firms. They can consolidate our position as scientific and technology superpowers, for example, in life sciences, in low carbon technologies, fueling export-led growth, commercializing innovations, and of course the transition to net zero. And last week, I was privileged and proud to chair the B7 meeting and summit, and we produced our communique, and that is fed in now to the G7 next month. And the Prime Minister, in his speech at the B7 last week, said the race to net zero is not a zero-sum game. And in Boris style, he said, green is good, and universities are leading the way in that. Diverse workplaces are more productive, they're more innovative, they're more socially impactful, and higher education is critical to building the workforce that our economy demands. And higher education is working hard to make sure it's more accessible to people of all ages. And at the CBI, I'm the first ethnic minority president in the history of CBI. I'm proud to have launched last October an initiative called Change the Race Ratio. I'd urge all of you to sign up to Change the Race Ratio, which is champion ethnic minority participation in businesses and organizations throughout the country. So when it comes to the new bill and the Queen's speech, I spoke in the debate yesterday and spoke, of course, of the bill that is proposing a lifelong loan entitlement. I think this is fantastic news. As a member of the Centenary Adult Education Commission, we produced our report in November 2019 recommending this. The CBI has for a long time been recommending this, and I think this is music to our ears. The government is committing to enabling people to have this ability of lifelong learning. And it's so, so important. And one of my favorite sayings of Mahatma Gandhi's is, live as if you're going to die tomorrow, learn as if you're going to live forever. Economic clusters, which I'm going to come to, are really important. Of course, research and development is important. And inward investment, the UK is a magnet for inward investment. I'm very proud that we're one of the second or third largest recipient of inward investment in the world as a country. And yet, just 3 regions of the United Kingdom account for more than half of R&D spend, London, the Southeast, and east of England. So we do need this whole term leveling up of spreading prosperity around the country is very important. In terms of diverse talent, the reality is less than 1% of university professors are Black. One of the things that we're in Change the Race Ratio, we're really recommending is transparency when it comes to the ethnicity pay gap. The gender pay gap is already there, which is now you have to publish as a company. We're saying the same should be there for the ethnicity pay gap. I just want to touch before moving on the crisis in India. I come from India originally, and the situation there is absolutely tragic and awful. I'm on the phone to my family many times a day, and every time there is sad news about somebody that we know or a family member who has passed away. And it is very sad. And what I am very proud of is the CBI. We are the preeminent business organization in the country, and we really have come to our fore in a time of crisis. Over the last 3 weeks, I've been leading the CBI's help to India in this crisis, working with the Indian High Commissioner and her team in London and our British High Commissioner in India. And it's amazing how our members have mobilized, including our universities, in helping out for India, whether it's providing oxygen generators and oxygen concentrators or medicines in every way, whether it's help and advice, including the knowledge of setting up Nightingale hospitals, whether it's to do with testing, whether it's to do with the vaccinations. We have really risen before, and companies have just, I could go on for a long time, but just a few examples, Rentokil, one of our members, £2.5 million of support they're providing. Pfizer, one of our members, $70 million, and their vaccine hasn't even been approved in India yet, and they're providing other products to India. And Motto, the service station network, 50 of them around our motorways, immediately switched to supporting British Asian Trust. that is providing 200,000 oxygen concentrators around India, and Motto in its first weekend alone raised £25,000. This is the spirit that I love about this country. This is the spirit that exists in our university. And throughout this pandemic, we've shown as a country resilience and adaptability, but we've also shown throughout this amazing spirit of community and compassion. And that spirit of community is at the heart of civic universities. The Centenary Adult Education Commission, and I also was a member of the Universities and Business Task Force of the Council of Universities and Business. That published in November last year, recommending that business and university should work more closely together. Now, how can I talk about civic universities and not talk about my own university, where I'm proud to be Chancellor, the University of Birmingham, the first civic university founded in 1900 in this country. And we are, of course, a strong supporter of the Civic University Commission. We're a founding partner of the Civic University Network. And we focus on every aspect of this, the place dimension, our teaching and learning programs. The Minister spoke about universities and schools working more closely together. Well, we have the University of Birmingham School. It's a phenomenal teaching school that is excelling. Our widening participation program. We lead the Aim Higher West Midlands Uni Connect program, along with our partner regional universities from Aston, Birmingham City, University College Birmingham, University of Worcester. We have also, you may have read in the press just recently, we've just recently launched the National College of Advanced Transport and Infrastructure. Phenomenal. And this is linked to our Birmingham Centre for Railway Research and Education, which is the leading railway institution, I would say one of the leading in the world. We won a Queen's Award in 2017. We've got mentoring schemes. We have internships. We have been awarded a Silver Engaged Watermark for the NCCPE. We have the West Midlands Regional Economic Development Institute, Student Entrepreneurship. I have a Leadership Institute, the Centre for Professional Legal Education and Research, and of course, the phenomenal institutions that exist within our universities is available to the whole of the community in Birmingham. The Barber Institute of Fine Arts, one of the 4 finest university museums in the country. Our Winterbourne Botanical Gardens, one of the finest university botanical gardens in the country. The Bramall Music Building. Elgar was our first professor of music. The Cadbury Research Library, the Lapworth Museum of Geology, the Royal Shakespeare Company. People don't realize the Shakespeare Institute at Stratford-upon-Avon is part of the University of Birmingham. One of the theatres of the Royal Shakespeare Company is in partnership with the University of Birmingham. We have the Institute for Global Innovation, which is absolutely phenomenal. We have the Birmingham Health Innovation Campus. We have the Tyneside Energy Park, the Manufacturing Technology Centre, Birmingham Health Partners, the West Midlands Academic and Health Sciences Network, the Birmingham Health Innovation Campus. I mean, I could just go on. And this is all powering our regional economy. Our independent impact assessment shows that we provide £3 billion to our local economy. And so I'm proud of the work that we do at the University of Birmingham in our community. And we are a civic university in the true sense of the word. And the Heats Commission, which I chaired at the CBI in partnership with the University of Birmingham, has done phenomenal work. And we now have the National Centre for Decommissioning Heat, which is based in the West Midlands, of which Birmingham is part. And we are hoping that we will be appointed as the delivery body to deliver the upgrading of 29 million homes around Britain, because 1/3 of greenhouse gases is heat, half that comes from houses. If we do not upgrade our homes to heat pumps, hydrogen boilers, and community heating, we will not achieve net zero by 2050. And that's why something like the National Commission for Decommissioning of Heat is very, very important. And I hope that that will transpire. And I want to talk also about Cambridge, because Cambridge is a university of which I'm a graduate. I'm a fellow of Sydney Sussex College. I've just finished chairing the Cambridge Judge Business School for 5 years. And at Cambridge, we have played a major role in business university collaboration. If you look at the clusters around the world, the CBI, we're promoting clusters in terms of leveling up as a key tool of leveling up around the country. And the best example we have in this country, in Silicon Valley and the Boston, Harvard, MIT, Cambridge on the East Coast of America, but in the UK, the best example is Cambridge, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. Who's the partner, AstraZeneca? Where are they headquartered? In Cambridge. So Cambridge started as a tech cluster. It's now also a life sciences cluster and it's phenomenal. So if we can create these clusters with universities at the heart of them around the country, it would be amazing. And Cambridge is the third most successful university innovation ecosystem in the world, the highest patent applications per 100,000 residents in the UK. The Cambridge cluster has created 18 unicorns. In 2019-20, 476 knowledge-intensive companies were formed. And we also have a phenomenally well-funded scientific community, which of course powers the R&D and infrastructure. So to conclude, I think that what we're talking about today is crucial to our country, crucial to our productivity, crucial to our security, crucial to the government's levelling up agenda. And the Secretary of State for Business, Kwasi Kwarteng, has an acronym that he says are his priorities as Minister for Business, and it is ENZI, E-N-Z-I, which is Enterprise, Net Zero, and Innovation. And I think that that is exactly what we're doing at our university. I'm delighted that Horizon is continuing. We've left the European Union, but we will never ever leave Europe. We now need to make sure the Turing scheme is put into action quickly to replicate Erasmus in Europe and international. Final point is international students. As co-chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on International Students, and as president of UKISA, it is so important, 26 billion pounds they bring into our country, but also the element of soft power, one of our strongest elements of soft power. Looking ahead to the next academic year, we need to make sure that our international students are able to come here, and we offer vaccinations to them when they come here, and also that the ones from red list countries do not have to go into hotel quarantine that they can ill afford, that our universities are prepared to provide safe quarantining for them. And so we've got to make sure we encourage our international students. So thank you very much. A great privilege to be with you. Thank you for all that you do for our sector.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lord Villamoria. And that was a really fascinating and wide-ranging discussion. And I know you need to shoot off, but I just wondered if I could invoke Chair's privilege and ask a very quick question, particularly in terms of your, your presidency of the CBI, and thinking of that 2030 vision, what you think are sort of the key priority, I suppose, in terms of university business collaboration in their local communities, so in their place.
Yes, and by the way, I don't have to rush off. I've got as much time as you need me for. It's only at 10 o'clock that I need to go, so I'm here with you as long as you need me. The key point, Richard, there with universities and business collaboration is that we are doing it. Is how much more can we do? And one of the areas I spoke about is investment, inward investment. What people don't realize is with R&D and innovation, we spend 1.7% of GDP on research and development and innovation. Countries like America and Germany spend 2.8%. Country like Israel spends 4%. If we were to spend 1% more of GDP on research and development and innovation, just imagine that extra 20 billion pounds a year, what we could achieve. And a huge part of that is through universities, but a huge part of that is also from business. And what people do not realize is a huge part of it is actually through inward investment that comes into the country, into universities and business. So if we can have more cross-border collaboration as well between universities, Horizon's a great example. The UCARI scheme with India is another great example. Academics from an Indian university, UK universities partnering up, working on a project. I go one step further. Why can't we have this cross-border collaboration between universities, but also have a business involved as well in each project? That will so powerfully power ahead our productivity. So I think that focus on R&D and innovation and universities and business working together in clusters. And I mentioned Cambridge as an example. Bristol, you've got aerospace. Edinburgh, you've got financial services. In the Northeast, you've got wind power. In the Midlands, we have manufacturing and automotives and rail. There's so many wonderful clusters that we can build on and that will help the whole levelling up agenda and spreading prosperity throughout the country.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, and thanks so much for your time. And I know the network is particularly thrilled at the partnership with the University of Birmingham and City Ready and focusing on some of those really key priorities. Now, moving on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Professor Andy Westwood, Professor of Government Practice at the University of Manchester. Now, many, if not all of you, will know Andy from his career in the sector and his thought leadership on skills and place. And Andy was, of course, instrumental in the establishment and development of the Civic University Commission alongside the UPP Foundation. So over to you, Andy.
Thanks, Richard, and good morning, everybody. I'm really pleased to be here and to be part of this growing civic movement. as Richard just said, I had the good fortune to be involved on the Civic Universities Commission with Richard and UPP, both of whom deserve a huge amount of credit for getting it moving in the first place. And obviously Lord Kerslake too, and everyone at Sheffield Hallam. I can't think of a better place to host this network, so I was really chuffed when that was announced, and even more so that it's being extended into the future and marked by this conference. So starting with the Civic Universities Commission, and just kind of thinking back to what I think we were all trying to do when the idea was beginning to take shape. It was obviously about sending a message to government and to communities, to our communities, but also to universities themselves, that the relationship between institutions and their places really mattered. And to be honest, more than it probably had for many for some time. And that however much other interests and incentives diverted universities away, the gravitational or what needed to be a gravitational pull needed to be kind of reasserted and rethought. I remember some of our early conversations about how the final report of the Commission couldn't just provide a list of the things that we do anyway. It needed to set really big ambitions and really kind of build new plans for what civic engagement, what civic university agreements could represent. And I think kind of, you know, just looking at the number of people on this call, looking at the number of agreements that are in progress, as well as those that have already been signed, and we can just see the phenomenal kind of take up of this agenda, and it's really exciting. I want to touch on why that matters now, or one of the reasons why that matters now, and I think it's something that all the speakers so far have already spoken about. And it was really something that in the wake of the EU referendum in particular, the spatial challenges that had existed before that time became kind of, much clearer, much more obvious to us as a driver of political and economic change. And for once, I think we became much more aware of the major regional and local inequalities that did exist and that we worked in, and that we continue to work in. The biggest, the deepest, the widest gaps in and between regions across advanced nations in the OECD. And of course, that was reaffirmed by the work of the 2070 Commission that Bob Kerslake also chaired and sort of communicated across the country. In universities and more broadly, it's become fashionable to think of research policy as missions. For that, we can thank Mariana Mazzucato at UCL. This idea that a mission can drive solutions and material change in places that are left behind, if that's the language you want to use, or places that are just not doing as well as they have, or as well as they might. You can choose your own favorite language or descriptions. But the idea that this is potentially the most important domestic mission that the UK faces. And it is the UK. Those inequalities exist across all four nations and within all four nations. So, that agenda is I think, a mission, and should be a mission adopted by the sector as well as the country as a whole. It does kind of take me to the obvious place, and it was gratifying to hear other speakers talk about this, and that's obviously the levelling up agenda. And it's where the levelling up and the civic agendas meet that I really wanted to kind of concentrate my remarks today. I think it's pretty clear, and we've heard from Michelle Donnellan that she supports this agenda. But I think it's pretty clear that universities and government really need to meet halfway on this. I've rarely heard, I'm sure many of you have rarely heard the minister speak as positively and supportively about universities as on that video clip just now. I have to say that she doesn't normally, And we know that the DFE and the OFS's focus on what they often call low value or low quality higher education does end up singling out courses and institutions that are often situated in the most deprived parts of England, where there are lower wages, lower incomes, lower productivity, and fewer good jobs. These aren't just the red wall seats, although it includes the so-called red wall seats in Teesside, West Yorkshire, the West Midlands, and so on. But there's no doubt, I think, that we could all be doing more in those places, both institutionally and intellectually. So, the idea of that mission for research councils and for UKRI to encourage academics across the country to focus on those issues, as well as those based in the institutions that are in them or near to them, is just as important, I think. There is no reason why social scientists at Oxford or Cambridge shouldn't be doing research on coastal towns in Suffolk or East Anglia, or for that matter, there's no reason why me as a social scientist in Manchester shouldn't be doing something similar in Oldham or in Blackpool. But for government, I would include DFE and BAYS, but also other departments, notably Treasury, communities and local government, and the agencies that kind of look after us and fund us on a daily basis, OFS and UKRI. That they can help us to achieve that. They can create more incentives, or at the very least, they can begin to dismantle some of the things that stand in the way of that. So I think the biggest question that leads to, which in the most regionally unequal country in Europe and the OECD, where a government is rightly committed to levelling up, is what exactly do they want universities to do to help? It's a question I would keep asking every minister every day between now and the spending review and beyond. Every minister every day. Because the simple answer is that all of the government's ambitions, all of those spatial inequalities between and within regions that we all see around us, all of them are harder to solve without universities. And when we ask the question, we can tell them that too. I think there are three key components. The first is human capital and skills, including at level 4 and 5, including part-time and lifelong learning. But it's not just offering it, it's retaining it and deploying it. The second, it leads on from Lord Billamoria's comments, is about research. And we have a traditional linear model of research where the majority of it is concentrated in one part of the country. Because we have an ambition to meet 2.4 and 3% of spending as a proportion of GDP, this isn't a zero-sum game. We don't need to make choices between those world-class institutions and other objectives, and we need to get on with that. The third area relates to that, and that is especially important, I think, at the local and civic level, and that's the importance of translational and applied research. You'll be hearing more about innovation deals when we have an innovation strategy, but this idea that together, those high-level skills, those retained skills, and applied research can build, what the innovation academics call absorptive capacity, is incredibly important. And what that really means is that the skills we produce, the research we produce, gets utilised in local firms, in local clusters, to the benefit of people in those economies and places. Joining those two things up are incredibly important. And if you like, we've heard a lot when Olga described the missing middle of level 4 and 5. There is also a missing middle in that applied research. So there are two. And if we can put them together, we're getting close to the kind of, the magic solution to the left behind spatial inequality agenda that we've heard so much about. So I'll finish there, because I think it will be very tempting for us in the sector over the next few months to talk to ministers about other things, to ask them questions about funding, about places, about Augur, to talk about free speech. Actually, I wouldn't do any of that. I would keep asking that question that I've already described. What can we do to help levelling up? Every time we speak to or see a minister from BAYS or DFE or number 10 or number 11. And that would be my advice to everybody at the conference today.
Thanks, Andy. Obviously a fascinating talk as always. You've written quite extensively about pride of place, particularly around quality of life issues in certain communities. And I wonder if you could just reflect on what sort of, is there a role for universities in that particular agenda, and how important that is for those communities?
Absolutely, Richard, and I think it's something that it's really important, and you've heard kind of come through already in all the kind of contributions this morning, and in many ways, I think that kind of pride of place, that sort of social aspect to levelling up, if you like, that cultural aspect, the identity kind of nature, and it does touch on things like high streets as well as kind of good jobs. It's that bit that we often underplay. And I think it's that bit that's often the gateway to the longer term stuff. As we know, conversations about higher education funding and research funding can seem very technocratic and complicated and distant from people's everyday lives. And I think kind of, really pushing that culture, that quality of life agenda, I think is just as significant. And in many ways, it kind of allows us to do the other stuff. It gives us the legitimacy as institutions and as a government to spend money on infrastructure, skills, and R&D. So I think it's really important.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, particularly that sort of pathway as a gateway from getting involved in that stuff in the ground, which then leads to sort of the bigger ticket items, particularly around the economy, I think is really, really important. So anyway, thank you, Andy, for that. A great discussion as always. We're coming to the end of our time as the opening session, but before we conclude the session, I just wanted to invoke Chair's privilege to talk a little bit about the future of the partnership between the Civic University Network and the UPP Foundation. Now, as you'll all be aware, the network was set up last year with 3 broad roles: sharing best practice and the events, toolkits and online communities which have been developed, you'll be fully aware of, the evaluation piece, and I'm really excited to see how the Civic Index develops, and the advocacy function, yes to government, and we've obviously just heard from the Minister around place-based policies, but as importantly, connecting universities with key sectors, thinking strategically about place. Now, the network will be developing these core functions further, and the partnership between the UPP Foundation and Civic University Network will help embed the strong foundations made in the last year. But as a foundation, we're very conscious that one theme that we haven't gone into much depth on in terms of the civic agenda is around the climate emergency. And civic universities clearly recognise that they have a key role to play in combating the climate emergency, and many have laid out ambitious net zero carbon reduction targets. With larger states, civic universities can make significant contributions through developing sustainable approaches to the use and design of campuses. In partnership with local authorities, they have key convening role in shaping local climate change action. And civic universities can also enable their students and staff to engage in positive community initiatives. Now, the partnership in year 2 between the UPP Foundation and the Civic University Network will engage university leaders and others in climate action. The end result will hopefully be the production of guidance and resources for civic universities to support them as they lead, facilitate and participate in a green recovery. Now, this piece of work will tie in neatly with the UPP Foundation's new strategy, which we're going to be launching later on in the summer. And if any of you have any thoughts and ideas or would like to participate in this programme, we'd be really delighted to hear from you. Now, finally, on a slightly different note, there's one other plug for the UPP Foundation I want to make before we bring things to a close. Next Tuesday, 25th of May, we are launching the UPP Foundation Student Futures Commission inquiry, chaired by Mary Cunott-Cook, which will be looking at how, in light of the disruption everyone has faced during the pandemic, universities can take action to support students make the best of their remaining time at university and support those who are starting their journey in higher education this year. This inquiry will essentially look at the full student experience: transition in, transition through and transition out. And so I know many of you will be interested in the student experience, and you're all invited to the virtual launch, where you'll hear from Mary, be the first to see the results of some student polling we've been conducting, and hear about how your institution can get involved with the commission, and we'd really love to see you there. And you can sign up to that event on the Foundation's website. So before we finish today, I just want to say a huge thank you to all our speakers and to all of you for engaging with the session. You can engage with the conference on Twitter using the handle and hashtags on your screen, which should be now, and be sure to visit the conference discussion board, the place space on Padlet. You can access lots of helpful resources on our members area, which are free to join. And if you don't already subscribe to the network newsletter, please do sign up to keep up to date with the latest news and events. And all these links are now provided, or will be provided, in the chat function. And on that note, thank you so much for coming. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the conference. There's some brilliant sessions coming up. The next one at 10:30. And I look forward to hearing from you, seeing from you both at the conference and hopefully in person as lockdown is lifted later on in the year. So thank you.